Yes, hello and good evening. Today, after a very long time, we will have a live coaching session again. Um, the long time was needed to implement some new functionality since almost all of the current functionality has been covered in the coaching sessions and therefore in the video recordings as well. But today we have a lot of new stuff to talk about. And as always, here at the Discord session, if you have questions, please jump in. This will help me to address the right topics. Yes, the recording is running, so everything will be published on YouTube later on. Today we will talk about the new feature which allows you to share telemetry data between all team members which have a valid connection to the team server. Um, telemetry data has already been shared in the past when you are running a team session. You know that you have access to all the data from all drivers in the race center, and you can also analyze the data later on using the stored session. But the telemetry data collected in your practice sessions has always been stored in the local database and only for you access in the past. This was a problem, for example, when you are preparing an endurance race and want to create a strategy with data for all the drivers which will participate in the race. And yes, today we will see how to cope with that and how to share data between team members. Okay, first, I am running a local team server here on my machines. So I'm not connected to my general team server because we want to play with data a little bit and I want to not to break something. So we are running a local team server which has been started here from my development environment. You can do this on your own. I think it's very important to talk about that. Um, in the installation directory of Simulator Controller, and I think all of you know the structure of this folder, there is a binaries directory, and in there is a folder named Team Server. You can copy this folder to any place on your hard disk and start the team server.exe in there, and you will have a locally running team server. For test,
Please?
yes?
Uh, is it indented that you have not share your screen?
Oh, oh yes, thank you. Yes, yes.
I was just typing the same thing.
Okay, now you will see the screen. Sorry for that.
Thank you.
Okay, once again, um, this is the execution window of the team server running on my local machine currently. And I have used the team server folder here in the binaries directory. You can copy it to any place on your hard disk and then start the team server.exe in there. So with that, you can always test the team server functionality only on your local machine. This is nothing you can use to share data between your teams, but between your team members, but it can be used to learn the functionality of this team server for your own. After that, you need to have a team server which is available on the internet. Either one of your team members is running the team server on a network attached storage, which is visible through the router to the open internet, or you are connecting to a team server at Azure, which I provide. There are several possibilities. Okay. Once the team server is there, you typically will have an account on the team server which you work with. And typically you will denote one of your team members as a so-called team manager, which handles all the duties to create drivers, sessions, teams, and stuff like that. We will see all this in a few minutes. But before you can do this with your locally running team server, you need to create an account like that. And therefore, we have the application server administration, which you might not use if you are using a team server on Azure, which I provide. But if you're running your own team server, you must connect to this locally or remotely running team server and create accounts on that so that others can use the functionality. It looks like this. There are a couple of accounts already there. We will use in the remaining part of the session the call account test number 1. And as you can see, this account has available session connections and available data connections. This is new for the version of simulator controller we are talking about. From now on, there are 2 types of connections against the team server. The session connection is well known. This is the connection which you are using when you are running a team session with race center support. And the new one, the data connection, is used to synchronize and replicate all the data from your database to all other participating team members. And if you want to use this functionality, yes, you have to have an account which allows the access to the given area. Okay, as I said, we will use test 1, so everything fine here. Once the account is there, or once you have been provided with an account by me, you can manage the team server connections using the simulator configuration application. There is a page called team server. And with this page, the team manager, the one person which manages all the stuff for all the other drivers at the team, can create at this page teams. For example, here the Furious Fasts with 4 drivers. I am part of the team, and we have one session named Test Day at the moment. This is for the team sessions you might be using already, and this feature you will know already. What's new now is that you have, beside the session token, which must be used to run a team session, you will also have a data token. A data token is used to create a data connection to the team server. I will show you in a few minutes what this means. But first, let's talk about the difference between those tokens. The session token typically is used to run a team session, for example, a 24-hour race. Session token will allow any driver, together with the server URL, to access the team session and connect to the team server while running the endurance race. Session tokens typically expire after a few days, so they are only valid for a given period of time, in the standard settings for 7 days, so that drivers can't connect to a session which has already been finished. And it's also a security issue, so that you won't give out an access right which is indeterminate in time. The data token is different. The data token is unlimited in terms of time. This is necessary since you want to establish a data connection and it should be valid all the time. You don't want to renew the token every once a week. This would not be very user friendly. and therefore this token never expires. If you want to have one of your team members access to the shared telemetry database, you will have to give him this token and the server URL. And now comes the funny part. In the session database, which is the user interface to the local database where all the data is collected, you will have the possibility to enter this information here in a team server section. We will come to that in a few seconds, but before, let me tell you about this little button. It's also important. I said the data token never expires, but there might be situations where you want to change the token because there was a problem with a team member. He left the team in anger, and you want to kill his connection to the team server as well. You cannot kill his token because the token is shared with all other team members. The only possibility is that you renew the token, which means this token is the new one. The old one is invalid from this moment on, and every member which is still participating in your data distribution or data synchronization group must use the new token from now on. Rarely used, but if you need it, it is worth it. So, okay, we renewed the token, so we need to copy it over here. And now let's talk about these settings here. First, the database folder. If you open the simulator controller folder in your local documents folder, you will find there a folder named database. This is the location where simulator controller, where all the applications, especially the assistants, store all the data which you generate in your sessions. This field here points to this folder. And you can change the location of this database folder by changing the location here. For example, you can go to another hard disk, create a folder there, database, and select it. Why I'm telling that? Because some users don't want to have a big database folder. This folder can get quite large over the time. In the documents folder, which is typically located in the system drive in the volume named C, and this is typically more a smaller hard drive or solid state drive, so you want to move the database content to another location on an external drive. If you do that, we now do that, and leave this dialog with OK, you will have the possibility to move all the contents to the new folder by saying yes, or you only want to move the location, but the new database folder will be empty. If you want to move your own folder, always select yes. No is something you can use to look at a database folder of another user which has zipped it and sent it to you. I use that sometimes to track down problems, but it is also helpful if you want to yeah, import some data from another user or something like that. Okay, I say cancel for the moment. And leave it at the standard location. I must reselect that. Okay. So, another important thing to know is that every user of simulator controller has a unique ID. This ID is created at the moment the software is installed and is located in the config directory. This is a small file with only one line. It's a cryptic number, a long number, which identifies this user of simulator controller uniquely. And this is very important when we come to sharing telemetry data with other users. This ID is also replicated to the database folder here. And it is important that both IDs are always identical. Otherwise, no replication will take place, because then the system thinks you are currently looking at a foreign database folder, for example, selected using this feature. And replicating foreign data is not a good idea. But if you don't touch anything, this ID will always be identical to your user ID. Okay, that's the theory part. Now to the practical part. As I said, we can enter here a connection, or we can open a connection to a team server. We can tell what kind of data might be shared, might be synchronized to the central team server, and therefore get available to other members in the team. Today we have telemetry data, lap times, fuel consumptions, tire wear, and stuff like that. And we have pressure data. Pressure data are calculated by the engineer and tell you at what environmental conditions which cold pressures for a given car on a given track might be ideal. Let's take a look here how this is used. For example, pressure data you will find here. Let me select the McLaren, my most beloved car, on Mount Panorama, and here we have the tire pressure advisor. And for example, for 17 degrees air temperature and 23 degrees track temperature. From all the data I collected, it looks like that this ones will be the best cold pressures on Mount Panorama. This is pressure data. Okay, come back here. I left with cancel, so we need to enter it again. So, okay, I say here that I want to share both my telemetry data and also my pressure data. I entered the credentials to the team server. I can check here if the credentials are valid by clicking on the key. A window will open up. No, I can't show you that. The window opened up on my main screen saying successfully connected to the team server, so you know the data is valid. And you can tell here the synchronization interval, something like 10 minutes is quite okay. So the system checks every 10 minutes whether there are new data on the team server from other drivers, and will replicate this data to your server, to your database, and also will replicate your new data back to the team server. There might be situations when you lost your local database folder, for example, after a hard disk crash. We all make backups, isn't it? But if you don't have a backup, you might want to recreate your local database, and you can do this by clicking the rebuild button, which will clear all the logs which the system uses to know which data has already been replicated, so that the system doesn't copy data which has already been copied. But if you want to rebuild your database, you must clear all these logs. Therefore here is the rebuild button. Okay, now let's go. The system recognizes that I have changed the database connection, and so that everything works, we'll have to restart all applications, which I will do now. And now we go to Simulator Startup and open the new monitor tool, and we will see in a few seconds that the database synchronization is already running. Yes, here it is, and it begins to replicate data from my local database to the team server. Here you see, by the way, the user ID. This is my user ID, and here you see that the ID is identical for the user and the database. So here on the system monitor, you can track down problems. For example, if the replication is not running, this will be red. And one reason might be that these IDs are different. Okay, when the system replicates data for the first time, for example, you have got the data token from your team manager, and you are running the initial replication. It can take quite a long time depending on the size of the database. For example, my database has several 10,000 entries, so it will take a couple of minutes when running locally, but if you are connected, for example, to a database in the Azure cloud, it will take even longer. But we see here already almost 5,000 objects replicated, so let's keep it running in the background. It will always run in the background. You can go here now in the simulation, do some practice work. It doesn't matter. It also does not take up much performance from the CPU, so the synchronizing is always running in the background. The next questions you might ask is, where is the data now? And therefore, we can take here a look in the session database. And take a look here at administration, which shows you here in the list all the data which is currently available in your database. And here, as you can see, we have lots of tracks already, track data, track maps. We have a couple of telemetry data, pressure data for different cars on different tracks. And you see here from different drivers. All these drivers here are part of the replication group we are running in our team. And you can also see here in the right column how many data objects has been provided or collected by which user. So you will always have an overview which data is available in your local database and in the central team database as well. Another important information about replication, and this is really, really important. you will always, when you have a connection to a team server, you will always get all the data which is available at the team server, but you will only replicate your own data. For example, only my entries are transferred to the team server. The system will never replicate, for example, data from Peter from my local database to the team server. Why is that? Because you might change the connection to a given team server temporarily if you are driving for another team. This is possible. You will then get all the data for all team members of this other team, but you will only send your data to the shared team database and not the data you have which has collected by your former team, which might not be a good idea if you are running for different teams. So data privacy is always retained. You take the decision that you want to share your data, and the team manager, which hands you the data token, take the decision that you will get the data for all other team members of this team. But if you switch teams, the game begins from new, and you will decide whether you want to share your data, and the team manager decides that you are part of the team. Okay, still running, 17,000 objects already. So what can we do with this data? There are a couple of possibilities. The first one is you are now able to create strategies using different drivers with different pace levels, different tire wear levels, and so on. Therefore, and this has been talked about in another coaching session, you are able, when you create a strategy, you are able to add drivers here which run the different stints, and it will only provide you the drivers for a given car simulator car track combination, which has for who are data available in the given database. If we are, for example, go to another, no, not this one, to another simulator with, let's take Silverstone, for example, and add another driver. We see we have lots of drivers in the team which have run on the McLaren on Silverstone, and now we can create a team strategy for an endurance race with all the data for these drivers. Yes?
Can I ask a question? Because I see a team member name there that's not part of your team. Nick and Dennis are both not members of
Yeah, that's
the
interesting.
team you're part of.
Yes, that's right. They are known drivers, but that there is no data available.
Okay.
When I have a connection when I have a connection to a team server, the driver identifiers, I can show you that, which you always find here. For example, in ACC. All these driver identifiers must be transferred to the team server, because in the later part of the replication, there might be data available for these drivers. Might be. But only if they are part of the replication group and have provided data. But this is something I cannot know at the beginning of the replication where I replicate the drivers. So drivers will be replicated all the time. But if there are no data available, nothing happens.
Okay.
Maybe something I must think about. You're right. That's not so nice. But I can assure you, and you can see this here as well. Here means where is it? Here, that no data has been replicated for these drivers. They are only known as driver names together with their identifier and so on. Okay. Another area where you can use driver data is in the race center when running the team session. For example, I can start the race center. We are running an endurance race. We have radical weather change and need to go to wet tires, for example, and do not have any prepared tire pressures, which typically can be entered here in the setups area of the race center for the given session. We have forgotten to note down wet tire setups because we were so sure that that the race will be in dry weather. But we are running with the AOS series and it's raining there all the time. And now we have to look up tire pressures for wet tires for the next driver which will drive the next stint. And we can use this by go to the database. The car and the track is already pre-selected. And now you can look up here tire pressures for the given driver. You can select the driver here. I don't have any pressures for the BMW M2 already, but let's play it this way. On Monza. And we say load. And it will transfer these pressures. Okay, we want to have wet tires. And these pressures will be transferred to the race center. So that's very, very useful when this data is available all the time to all team members. You will never be left in the rain, to say it using a word game, when you replicate the data to the central team server. So that's it for that was everything I want to tell you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, because it seems to me that when you have this data replication running, that's nice to have, and you are building up a lot of information in the database. What is then the let's say is this the main way to collect data for a team? Because it used to be using the team server and creating sessions there. What's the use case for the one or the other? Do you understand the question?
Yes, I understand. And the answer for the question is a little bit also history, because as you know, the simulator controller suite is a always growing software system, and yes, we already have possibilities to share data between team members. For example, we already have the availability to select data here, export it, send the zip file to your team member, and the team member can import your data in his database. This is possible since a couple of months. We also had in the past the functionality that when you have run a team race using Race Center, the data collected there for the different drivers will also be stored in your local database. So you might already have data from different drivers in your database, even if you haven't used the team server replication already. So you asked for the best way. The best way, I think, for a team which drives a lot together will now to use the team server data synchronization, because this assures that every data which is collected, even if you're running a race against AI on your local machine without any online connection, even this data will end up in the central team database and might be used by other drivers to help you in an endurance race. So if you have a stable team and all of the team members are using the software, this will be the best way to do it. But all the other ways still work. So if you only want to share a selected set of data with a person which only will run one endurance race together with your team, it might be preferable to send him an export file using this way, for example. Question answered?
Yes, that was exactly the answer I hoped you would give.
Any other questions?
Yes, with the replication to the team server, if you can open that again on this page.
This one here?
Yes, and now it's built for replicating to one server.
Yes.
In the future, is it possible, because I drive in multiple teams with in multiple communities.
Yeah.
Is it possible you can enter multiple URLs and data tokens? Because you can, as you told, only your own data is synchronized.
Yeah.
So is it possible to set up more than one data stream, so I can push my data to 3 servers at once?
You hear me laughing.
Yeah.
Always requirements. I will never can retire. Yes, I can. I put it on the list. It will be possible. It is
Okay.
not possible for the moment. You will have to enter the token one by one and
Yeah.
let it synchronize, but that's not quite user friendly.
Mhm.
I think in the future we will have a possibility like this. You enter a semicolon here and enter several tokens. Maybe this way. I will think about
Yeah.
it. Okay?
Yes, and also for the server URL then, because yeah.
I think
Okay.
most preferable will be to create named profiles and select which profiles are active. Stuff like that. I will put it on the list.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question.
Okay?
I'm currently a patron, and I'm using the team server you are providing.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. Am I now able to create this data synchronization for my team server, or do I need to get my data and the data token from you now?
Yes, very good questions. I almost forgot that. Yes, you are already entitled to use the data synchronization because I have checked. I will not show you your account, but only the test account. Let's take a look here. Let's do it that this is your account. So on your account, both session connections and data connections are available. The reason for that is because, as you said, you are a patron and you have the crew chief patron level, and this entitles you to use both session synchronization and session connections and data connections. As you know, we have 3 different levels of patrons, and the lowest level has no team server connection at all. The middle level is entitled to use session connections, and the upper level or the third level can use both ones. The reason for that is the CPU and data requirements for data connections is even larger than for the session connection, and therefore I need a couple of bucks to pay Azure for it. If you have a team, for example, with 5 or 7 team members, which replicate data every 10 minutes, I will get quite a bill from Azure. So you need to have the third level of patronage to get data connection access. But as I said, you have it, and while you, or because you have it, you will see when you are here at the team server page that you have 2 different tokens. We can, for example, connect using the test1 account, which has no data access. The test2 account, we will do it. And there's only a session token. I will connect using the admin account, which has, oh no, it has, let's take this one. Doesn't make much sense, but just for demonstration purposes, we have an account which has no access at all. And you see no tokens available. But you will have both tokens.
Okay, then I need a little bit of assistance after the session. But okay.
No problem.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Looks like all questions are satisfied. Then I will stop the recording.